So imagine you were trying to run a multi-million-dollar chemical plant,
Okay.
but you're in a region where local warlords are literally using your factory workers as contract killers. And, armed insurgents are just roaming the forests.
Right, which is an absolute nightmare scenario for any business.
Exactly. You can't call the police. You really can't rely on the government. So what do? I mean, if you're T G Venkatesh, you don't buy guns. You start paying their wives.
Which is just a massive, radical departure from everything we are taught about regional pacification.
Yeah.
I mean, usually when we think about transforming a volatile landscape, we expect force meeting force, right?
Yeah, totally.
So to see an industrialist eradicate lawlessness, not through, security crackdowns, but through profound emotional intelligence and mass economic empowerment, it just completely forces us to reevaluate what corporate influence can actually achieve.
Welcome to the deep dive. We have an incredibly poignant mission for you today. We are pulling all of this from an exclusive, really fascinating interview featured in the June 2026 edition of the e-magazine Presence.
And just to ground you in what Presence is, because it's important context, it's actually India's longest-running digital-only e-magazine.
Right.
Yeah, 0 print copies, entirely digital. It's published by the Prime Point Foundation. It was founded back in March 2006 by Prime Point Srinivasan, and the origin story is actually quite special.
Oh, yeah, it really is.
It was born out of a direct suggestion by the legendary former president of India, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. He basically wanted to pioneer positive, constructive journalism.
And that legacy of positive journalism really, really shines through in the specific article we're looking at today. It's part of a series called Visionary Titans, and it was penned by the editor-in-chief, Priyadharshni Rahul.
Right.
And her subject for this piece is T G Venkatesh. Now, if you look him up, his resume is honestly intimidating.
Oh, absolutely.
He's a renowned industrialist from Andhra Pradesh. He served as a minister in the state government. He was a member of parliament in the Rajya Sabha, where his chairmanship of the Transport Committee actually won the prestigious Sansad Ratna Award for outstanding performance.
Right, and he suggested so many critical reforms to the government during his tenure there. His policy interventions were highly influential. But, we are deliberately setting all of those dry corporate and political milestones aside today.
We are, because this deep dive, it's about the raw human aspects of leadership. We want to show you how a foundation of empathy, a really heavy dose of stubbornness, and an unshakable commitment to the working class didn't just build factories.
Yeah.
It systematically dismantled regional violence and redefined what a corporate legacy is even supposed to look like.
Because to understand how Venkatesh built the multi-million-dollar TGV group, you really have to look at the sheer audacity of what he attempted. I mean, he brought advanced bipolar membrane cell technology to the Rayalaseema region.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because advanced bipolar membrane cell technology sounds incredibly dense.
It does, yeah.
What does that actually mean for the listener trying to picture this on the ground?
Think of it as trying to build a highly volatile, state-of-the-art chemical processing plant, something that requires, absolute precision, specialized engineering, massive logistical support.
Right.
But you're building it in an environment that had zero industrial infrastructure, no support systems, no ready supply chains. It's basically heavy chemical manufacturing in a virtual industrial desert.
Wow.
The logistical nightmare is just staggering. And to pull that off, you need an unbreakable psychological framework. And for Venkatesh, that framework came directly from his father.
Yeah, his father instilled 3 unbreakable rules. 1, be stubborn when you are correct. 2, allow zero hanky-panky, meaning, no shady dealings, no compromises on your integrity, ever.
Exactly.
And 3, remain completely honest to your word. Like, when you commit, you never look back.
It sounds like a very rigid moral architecture, right?
Right.
But rigidity alone just makes a person inflexible. What's fascinating here is how Venkatesh's leadership style, how that rigid integrity was softened and deeply shaped by profound emotional encounters in his early life.
There is this one story from his school days that just stops you in your tracks. It involves his school headmaster, Mr. Narasimha Rao.
Yeah, this story is incredible.
It really is basically the root system of Venkatesh's entire philosophy, because you can build the tallest corporate skyscraper, but if the roots, like the core human attachments, aren't secure, the whole thing just falls over in the wind.
Right, so decades after Venkatesh had left school, when he was already heavily immersed in running his industries in Kurnool, this strict, elderly headmaster called him back for one final visit.
Yeah.
Rao's wife had just passed away. And the crucial context for you to understand here is that when she was alive, Rao and his wife fought constantly.
Constantly.
It was well known. A nonstop domestic battle, day in and day out.
So Venkatesh walks into this house probably expecting a very stoic, formal grieving process from the super strict disciplinarian. But instead, he finds his old headmaster just weeping uncontrollably, completely shattered.
Just broken.
And Venkatesh is understandably confused. He actually asks him, "Sir, you two were fighting so much when she was alive. Why are you crying so bitterly now?"
And the headmaster's response is honestly a masterclass in understanding the depths of human connection. He tells his former student that a domestic fight and deep marital attachment are two entirely different universes.
Right.
He says, even in the dead of night, if I want a glass of water, she was the one who had to bring it. I cannot demand that from my daughter-in-law or my son.
He was essentially explaining that the arguments, well, they were just the surface noise of living, but their attachment was the actual structural foundation of his survival.
Exactly.
He looked at Venkatesh and basically told him that without his partner, he simply wouldn't survive many more days.
But the moment that truly defines their bond happens next. The headmaster asked Venkatesh for 10,000 rupees, and Venkatesh happened to have that exact amount in his pocket. It was money he had specifically withdrawn for an upcoming industrial trip to Kolkata.
Which is just wild timing.
Right. So he hands it over, and the headmaster takes it and tucks it safely beneath his pillow.
And Venkatesh tries to comfort him. He tells him, use the money for medical care, assures him he isn't going to die anytime soon. But Rao holds his hand and insists that no, he is going to die.
Yeah.
And he explicitly refuses his own children's charity. He says his kids are comfortable, but he wants Venkatesh's money specifically for his anthokriya, his last rites. He wanted only his students' money to be used for his funeral expenses.
I mean, just let the emotional weight of that sink in for a second. An educator bypassing his own blood relatives to entrust his final earthly dignity to a former student.
It's heavy.
And the timing of what followed is almost cinematic. The very moment Venkatesh's flight touched down in Kolkata for his business trip, he received the message that his headmaster had passed away.
And when they went to prepare the body, sure enough, under his pillow, they found a letter. The headmaster had written strict instructions ensuring that only Venkatesh's 10,000 rupees were used for the funeral.
How Venkatesh processed that experience really dictates everything that follows in his corporate life. He realized that human connection, raw vulnerability, it is not a liability. It is the absolute bedrock of trust.
Right.
If a teacher can place the ultimate trust of his final rites in a student, a corporate leader owes a similar, unshakable depth of care to the people physically building his empire.
He took that philosophy and mapped it directly onto his blue-collar workforce.
And the way he applied that care connects to another incredible story from his youth. It was this brutal lesson in extortion.
Oh, the football incident.
Yeah. When Venkatesh was about 9 years old, he was playing football. A stray stone from the match accidentally hits another boy and draws blood. Now, this injured boy happened to be the son of a prominent judge.
Right.
And their playground was located right next to the local jail and the courthouse.
Which is literally the worst possible place for an accident if you're a terrified 9-year-old.
Oh, absolutely. The judge's son immediately weaponizes the situation.
Yeah.
He points to the jail, threatens to have his powerful father throw Venkatesh behind bars, and basically begins a systematic campaign of blackmail.
Wow.
For an entire week, he extorts money from Venkatesh, starting with a single rupee, then escalating to larger coins, demanding cash every single day until the wound on his head finally healed.
But the very day the mark disappeared and the physical evidence was gone, Venkatesh didn't just walk away relieved. He physically fought back. He beat the kid, demanded his extorted money back, and yelled that the kid couldn't go crying to his judge father now because there was no injury left to show.
It's such a bold move for a kid.
It really is. And the takeaway for Venkatesh was incredibly profound. Vice, extortion, and bad habits don't survive in the light. They thrive entirely on creating an environment of fear and hidden dependency.
And he took that realization about hidden dependencies and engineered one of the most fascinating corporate welfare policies you will ever hear about, the Gowrie allowance.
Yeah.
He was named affectionately after his mother. Venkatesh looked at his blue-collar workforce and saw this tragic cycle. Hard-earned factory wages were being routinely destroyed by alcohol and cigarettes, leaving the workers' families in total economic ruin.
And he knew that just standing on a soapbox, handing out pamphlets and preaching about the dangers of drinking wouldn't change a single thing.
Preaching rarely alters entrenched behavior. You have to change the economic incentives. So he offered a specific monthly cash bonus to employees who completely abstained from smoking and alcohol.
Which sounds standard enough on the surface.
Right, but the true brilliance, the human crux of the policy that actually made this work, was the delivery method. He absolutely never hands that bonus money to the worker.
Never.
It is documented, signed, and issued directly into the hands of the housewives or the parents of the employees.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Let's dig into the how of this. Because if you're listening, you might be thinking, wait, if you tell a bunch of hardworking men that their bonus is bypassing them and going straight to their wives, doesn't that cause a massive riot on the factory floor?
You would think so, yeah.
I mean, most corporations view a worker's personal life as a strict boundary. It's not their problem. By stepping directly into the living room of his employees and handing cash to the spouse, wasn't he taking on a massive, almost paternal risk?
Well, in a Western hyper-individualistic corporate model, it would absolutely be seen as paternalistic overreach. But here is the genius of the mechanism. It was an opt-in bonus. It wasn't a deduction from their base wages.
Ah, I see.
So if a male worker wanted to complain that his wife was receiving extra free money for the household, he would essentially have to stand up in front of his peers and his family and argue that he preferred the freedom to drink over his family's financial security.
Wow.
The social pressure naturally regulated the pushback.
It's brilliant social engineering.
Completely.
Hmm.
He recognized that if you want to build an industrial empire, you have to first secure the economic sanctity of the homes building it. By putting the money directly in the hands of the women, he ensured it wasn't squandered. It actually funded nutrition, domestic security, and children's education.
To put the staggering scale of this into perspective for you, across his industrial units, the company spends around 45 lakh rupees every single month on this allowance alone.
That's a huge amount.
Yeah, for our international listeners, that is roughly 54,000 US dollars out of pocket every single month. That is a massive financial commitment to localized social engineering.
But the return on that investment was a workforce that was deeply, fiercely loyal. And he was going to need every ounce of that loyalty, because opening the factory doors in Kurnool meant stepping into a uniquely dangerous world.
So he secures the living rooms of his workers. But how does that localized loyalty survive when the factory doors open into one of the most violently contested, lawless regions in the state?
It wasn't easy.
For those who aren't familiar, Kurnool is in the Rayalaseema region. Historically, this was one of the most volatile, faction-ridden, and Naxalite-prone areas in Andhra Pradesh.
The socioeconomic dynamics there were incredibly oppressive. The lands were dominated by massive, wealthy land grabbers. These warlord types heavily exploited the marginalized communities, particularly the Valmikis or the Boyas.
And these communities have an incredible heritage, right? They possess a fierce fighting lineage that dates all the way back to the Vijayanagara Empire.
They do. But in modern times, they had been pushed into extreme poverty. Corrupt faction leaders paid them a pittance to execute horrific crimes, including contract murders, acting as disposable muscle while the masterminds sat safely in their fortified mansions.
So Venkatesh enters this explosive space, and he hires the vast majority of these very men as hamalis, heavy loaders, and workers in his chemical factories. But instead of exploiting them, he treats them with absolute dignity.
Yeah, he gives them fair wages, health care, and human respect.
And the result of that respect was a protective barrier that money simply couldn't buy. These workers grew so fiercely protective of Venkatesh's family that the elders of the community would regularly come to his courtyard.
Right. They actually began training Venkatesh's family in Kursamu, which is traditional stick fighting and physical conditioning, from the time the children were just 7 years old.
It completely shifted the balance of power. When the local corrupt faction leaders or land grabbers tried to flex their muscle or mobilize violence against the TGV group, this local community, which had previously been the muscle for the bad guys, flat out refused to cooperate.
Exactly.
They formed an impenetrable human shield around Venkatesh's businesses because he had given them economic equity.
And Venkatesh paired this collective loyalty with immense personal courage. He realized quickly that these wealthy faction leaders were fundamentally cowards. They relied on exploiting others' poverty to do their dirty work.
Right.
So whenever an issue arose, Venkatesh didn't cower behind lawyers or hire his own goons. He walked directly into their territories, stood face to face with them, and challenged them to step forward.
And time again, they would back down and retreat. But the faction leaders were only one side of the coin. The region was also heavily destabilized by the Naxalite insurgency. The Nalamala forest ran right through their area, and some of the top Naxalite commanders emerged from those woods.
Now, this dynamic was far more complex. The Naxalites weren't just corrupt opportunists. They were an armed, deeply ideological communist insurgency. Yet they treated Venkatesh, a wealthy capitalist industrialist, with a chilling, almost surreal level of respect.
Hold on, I have to jump in here because the story is just wild.
It really is.
It's midnight. Around 12:30 or 1 in the morning, a group of armed Naxalites walks right into Venkatesh's home, and among them is this very tall, formidable lady commander. An armed communist insurgency commander walks into the home of an industrialist in the dead of night, and they just sit down and chat.
I know, it sounds crazy.
How does he not get kidnapped on the spot? That sounds like a myth.
It sounds impossible until you understand the concept of dharma in that specific regional context. She tells him, "Sir, we have immense respect for you, which is why we have come to you directly."
Wow.
She explains that they are there out of a sense of duty, or dharma, to inform him that they're going to execute a local forest-based MLA who had recently killed their associates. They didn't want Venkatesh to misunderstand their motives or feel personally threatened.
And Venkatesh actually tries to reason with her. He asks them to reconsider, to avoid such a violent, hard line, but she refuses, stating their people's blood had been spilled and retaliation was inevitable. And within 10 days, that MLA was killed.
Yeah.
It just highlights how brutally dangerous the razor's edge he was walking on actually was.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it was a literal war zone. And it forces you to ask, why did an armed insurgency respect this capitalist? Because they recognized his genuine, uncorrupted authority. In a brutally lawless environment, he wasn't exploiting the poor, he was actively elevating them.
Which leads to Venkatesh's ultimate realization. Pure courage and mutual respect kept him alive, but it wasn't going to cure the region's violence. He understood that extremism in his region wasn't just born out of some ideological textbook. It was an economic disease.
Exactly. Naxalism thrived on raw poverty. The insurgency was fueled by systemic neglect post-independence. Strict deforestation regulations had left the local tribes with absolutely no means to earn a living in the forests. It was an economic disease requiring an economic cure.
So Venkatesh launches a massive strategy: counter lawlessness with mass employment. He steps up and protects over 30,000 acres of land surrounding Kurnool, keeping it out of the hands of the illegal land grabbers.
Reclaiming 30,000 acres is a staggering logistical feat. He leverages that land to scale the SRI Freya, Sri Rayalaseema alkalis, and allied chemicals. For the listener, SRI isn't just a single factory, it's an entire industrial ecosystem.
Right.
He essentially turned a barren, contested region into a massive industrial zone, giving thousands of people stable livelihoods and a real stake in the economy.
And the mechanism of why this works is so undeniable. When you give a person a steady income, a house, and an actual stake in the local economy, the ground beneath extremism just naturally evaporates. You can't radicalize a populace that is busy building a future.
The proof is entirely in the outcome. Because of these massive, empathy-driven developmental efforts, Naxalism in Kurnool is now completely a thing of the past.
That's incredible.
The insurgency was eradicated not by military bullets, but by steady paychecks.
It's an astonishing legacy, and what's beautiful, as a Pre-Sense article highlights, is that this legacy of public service didn't stop with him. Even now, he continues to silently support society, but he has effectively passed the torch to his son, T G Varath.
Varath's journey is a fascinating study in legacy all on its own. He completed his MBA from Cardiff University in the UK.
Right.
And at that point, he had the choice to just sit back, enjoy his international degree, and purely manage the family's multi-million-dollar corporate assets from a comfortable air-conditioned office.
But his father groomed him to understand that wealth without public service is essentially meaningless. So Varhad didn't just step into the boardroom. He studied law, he explored the civil services, and he spent significant time immersing himself in the actual grassroots realities of their workers.
And today, heavily motivated by his father's journey, T G Varath serves as the Minister of Industries and Commerce in the Andhra Pradesh government. He is actively using his platform to promote industries and elevate the state's entire economy.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? When you look at the arc of this story, you see this incredible evolution. You have a father who literally had to fight off physical factionalism, standing face-to-face with warlords, just to build factories and secure his workers' homes.
Yeah.
And now, a generation later, you have a son who gets to use state policy to invite global investments into a pacified, thriving region.
It proves that true corporate governance isn't found in a boardroom spreadsheet. It is found in the dirt and the humanity of the workforce. It's found in honoring a dying teacher's last wish and understanding the sacredness of human attachment.
Absolutely.
It's found in bypassing the worker to fund a family's nutrition directly. And ultimately, it's found in having the vision to replace a rebel's gun with a steady paycheck and a sense of dignity.
It completely flips the script on how we view industrial development, and it leaves you with a thought that is very hard to shake. If one man's empathy-driven employment strategies could completely pacify a deeply entrenched, violent extremist region, a place where traditional law enforcement had struggled for decades,
Right.
what does that say about how modern governments worldwide should be combating radicalization? Should our corporate boardrooms actually be viewed as the new, most effective front lines of peace building?